Hi, welcome back to McClutchy Maths. My name is Natalie McClutchy, and today we're going to be continuing our consumer arithmetic series by looking at sources of income. And this video is aimed at Year 11 students across different parts of Australia and different strands of mathematics. In this video, you're going to find out how to calculate wages and salaries, overtime, commission, and piecework. I'm going to take you through a series of worked examples to cover these different topics. So let's firstly get started right into it and talk about what wages and salaries are. I want to mainly highlight what the difference is between the two. So with a salary, it is a fixed amount that you are paid, and no matter how much extra work that you do, you don't get paid any extra. So as a teacher, for example, I'm on a salary. Let's say my salary was $50,000. Even if I did 100 hours overtime or 5 hours overtime in a week, I'm never going to get paid more than that $50,000 per year. Usually when salaries are advertised on a website such as seek.com or jora.com, they're advertised giving you an annual amount, meaning amount per year, and that's given to you before tax. Also, salaries typically are provided to professional style jobs, such as people who work in offices or people who have a university degree. On the other hand, wages vary with the amount of hours that you work. And so if you work 100 hours of overtime or only 5 hours of overtime, you can vary the amount that you are paid quite a lot. It's advertised usually on advertising websites as a rate per hour before tax, such as $45 per hour. And these are jobs that are typically trades or jobs working in retail or food service or in a casual environment. So even teachers can be paid a wage, for example, if you're doing external marking for the QCAA, that's paid as an hourly rate, or if you're working as a casual teacher, that's advertised as an hourly rate as well. So it does vary, but the key difference between a salary and a wage is that salaries are a fixed amount paid no matter how much you earn, how many hours you work, it's always going to be the same. Whereas wages, you can increase the amount that you bring home depending on how many extra hours that you work. So let's look at our first example. Jai is an accountant. He earns a salary of $70,000 per year. How much does he earn per week? So we need to remember firstly that there are 52 weeks in a year, and typically what I do find is that students often make the mistake of thinking that there are 50 weeks in a year. So you need to just remember it's 52. You're not going to find that on a formula sheet, you just need to know that. So we're going to take our weekly salary, $70,000, divide that by 52, and our final answer is that his weekly salary is $1,346.15. Now I just want to draw a little bit of attention here to the way the working has been set out. You'll notice that it's not just a bunch of numbers on a page with a calculation and a final answer. I actually put some words around what it is that I'm calculating. I'm calculating Jai's weekly salary. So if you want to get the gold standard in working in an exam as well, you're going to put a few words around what it is you're calculating. Now, this is a pretty straightforward calculation right here. You might think it doesn't really need a lot of words around it. I'm only asked to find one thing, and it was pretty easy getting there. That's true. However, when you are asked to calculate combinations of different types of income, it does get a little bit more complicated, and it's important to put some words around that to explain what it is that you're calculating. Otherwise, it looks like a big mess on a page, and it's very hard for your teacher to work out what you've done. Also notice my final answer has a dollar sign and is rounded to 2 decimal places. And this is important as well when you're doing your working for any of these types of calculations, because we're calculating money. So we want to make sure we present that with the correct units of measurement and the right number of decimal places. So let's move on to another worked example. Sam's an electrician. He's earning $60 per hour. How much does Sam earn in a week when he works 38 hours? So clearly Sam's on a wage because he's got an hourly rate. So we just want to work out how much he's going to take home for the whole week. So once again, his weekly wage is $60 per hour multiplied by the 38 hours, and that gives us a weekly wage of $2,280. Once again, I've got the dollar sign, and I don't need to give 2 decimal places if there are no cents. I can just leave that in rounded whole numbers. Let's look at another worked example. Devon is a barista. In a week, she worked 15 hours and was paid $300. How much does she earn per hour? So we're working backwards this time to find her hourly rate. So firstly, her hourly wage is going to be the $300 divided by the 15 hours, and that gives us Devon's wage of $20 per hour. Once again, I don't need to give the 2 decimal places if there's no cents involved, if it rounds off nicely to an exact amount. So that's wages and salaries in a nutshell. Let's talk a little bit about overtime. So we've already mentioned that people that are on wages get paid extra if they work extra hours. It gets even better for them, in fact. At certain times of the week, they get what's called time and a half overtime or double time overtime. So typically this is paid if you work beyond the normal work hours in a day. So most people work an 8-hour or 7.5-hour work day. And some people are very fortunate that if they work above and beyond that, they might get paid their normal wage plus 50% more for that hourly rate. Typically on public holidays and on weekends, people are paid time and a half overtime or double time overtime, or sometimes even double time and a half. That's pretty fantastic. And the reason for that is this is a way that employers can encourage people to come to work at times that would be less convenient or to put in those extra hours. We've also got something called allowances, and these are typically given for poor working conditions, and it's usually something that's been negotiated by a union. So for example, if someone had to work in rainy conditions or snowy conditions, they might be paid a little bonus on top of their normal hourly rate. It might be $2 per hour for every hour that it's snowing or every hour that it's raining. It might be a case, for example, my husband sometimes gets paid what's called a meal allowance, and that's to compensate for the fact that he's not working in an environment where there's a regular kitchen that gives him access to a refrigerator and a microwave oven to heat up his lunch. So he might be paid $5 per day in situations like that. Sometimes some sites that you may work on might give a clothing allowance where they understand that you have to provide your own personal protective equipment and possibly your own uniform, so they provide an allowance of that per day as well. So let's look at some worked examples where overtime is calculated. Firstly, I've got Will. He works in construction and his normal hourly rate is $45 per hour. And his normal week consists of 38-hour week. On top of that, he gets paid time and a half for the first 6 hours of overtime that he does, and then double time for all the overtime after that. You'll sometimes see this word thereafter, meaning everything after that. We need to calculate his pay for that particular week where he works 50 hours. So we need to have a little bit of a think about this, because this particular situation, we've actually got his wage broken up into 3 different categories. First of all, we've got his normal hours, $45 an hour for the 38 hours. Then on top of that, we've got this time and a half for the first 6 hours. So what that will be is his $45 an hour multiplied by 1.5, because he gets $45 plus half of that again for those first 6 hours of overtime. And then everything after those first 6 hours of overtime, he's going to be paid double time, which means his salary his wage of $45 an hour will double. He'll get paid $90 an hour for those extra hours of overtime. That's pretty fantastic. So this is one of the reasons why I suggested earlier in the video that we should put some words around our calculations, because we've got 3 lots of calculations here. We want to be able to distinguish what we're doing and where, and not just lump it all together, because that gets really messy. It's easy to make mistakes, and it's very hard to mark your work in situations like that. So firstly, we have his normal pay. That's the $45 multiplied by 38 hours, which equals $1,710. You could have put that underneath, but I'm trying to save some space here. Next, we want to work out how many hours of overtime he's actually worked. So we know that he worked a week of 50 hours. We take away the hours that he would normally work. That's 38 hours, which means that he's worked 12 hours of overtime altogether. Now, the first 6 hours are going to be made up of that time and a half pay, and then the remainder, which is going to be another 6 hours, 12 take away 6, that's going to be double time. So let's do the time and a half pay separately from the normal pay. $45 an hour, timesing it by time and a half, time being 100%, half being 50% more, and then there's 6 hours at that rate, which gives us a total of $432 for those hours of overtime. And now we've got his double time pay. That's the extra 6 hours that he did at the $45 an hour rate, but that rate gets doubled because it's double time. And that means he gets paid $540 for that second set of 6 hours. So now we've got normal pay, we've got time and a half pay, and we've got overtime pay. We need to add all of that together, and we come up with his total pay for that normal week of, or that not normal week, that extra week of 50 hours of $2,682. Here's our next example. We're looking at David. He's paid $55 an hour on weekdays, that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He gets paid time and a half on Saturdays and double time on Sundays. He also gets an allowance of $5 a day for meals, that's a little bit like my husband, and $2.50 an hour if it's raining. So we need to calculate his pay for the week shown in the table below. Now, typically people that are on wages may have to fill out a timesheet that tells their payroll officer how many hours they work each day. Sometimes people have to sign in and sign out at the end of the day with the time that they started and the time they finished, or even clock in and clock off with some sort of a card, maybe swipe in, swipe off. So that helps the payroll officer work out what your pay is. So in this particular situation, we can see that David's worked for full 7 days. Some of those days there were wet hours, and for each of those days he's going to be paid a meal allowance. So we need to break this down into small chunks. So firstly, let's look at his normal hours. That's his weekdays. We're just simply going to add up those 5 numbers, and that comes up to 39.5 hours from Monday through to Friday. Our next step is we're going to work out what that normal pay is. It's 39.5 hours multiplied by $55 an hour, and that gives us his pay from the weekdays of $2,172.50. Our next step is we need to work out the time and a half pay. So we know that he worked on Saturday. That's the only day that attracts the time and a half hours. It's the $55 times 1.5 times the 5 hours for that particular day. And that gives us $412.50. We're going to repeat that same process, but with our double time for Sunday, $55 multiplied by the 4 hours and multiplied by the double time by 2. And that gives us $440 for Sunday. We're not quite finished. We've got those allowances now. So first we've got the meal allowance. He worked 7 days and he's paid $5 a day. That's a pretty easy one. You can do that in your head. It's $35. And then we've got his weather allowance. Now there was a total of 5 hours across Wednesday and Thursday where the weather was wet. And so he got paid $2.50 for each of those hours, a total of $12.50. And then we simply need to bring all of that together. Adding that all up on our calculator gives us a total pay of $3,072.50. Not bad, David. Okay, let's talk a little bit now about a different kind of income. It's called commission. This is typically paid to people who are working in the sales industry. It's a way that employers can encourage their salespeople, such as real estate agents, people who sell cars, people who sell jewelry, or who sell clothing, to sell way more than what they would sell if they were just standing around in the showroom hoping that the sale would come to them. So it's a way that encourages salespeople to be more proactive and to take a real interest in the business. You typically see commissions for businesses like Tupperware or Nutrimetics, where somebody is working for themselves for another company. So they get a percentage of what is sold. So to be able to work out a commission, you need to be able to work out percentages. We've also got a part of that called a retainer. Now, a retainer is a fixed base salary. So in some industries, for example, in real estate, there's times where not many houses are sold, there's not a lot of demand for houses. And so in situations like that, if somebody was on 100% commission, they would not get paid at all. And that's kind of hard. And it's hard to attract people into industries like that when sales are down. So some businesses pay what's called a retainer. So it's a small fixed salary that isn't affected by how much you sell. And that's kind of like your bottom line salary that you're going to earn if you sell nothing or if you sell $1 million. So basically your total pay, if you're working in this kind of industry, is going to be equal to your fixed retainer plus your commission. And the commission is calculated as a percentage of sales. Let's look at an example. Mary Angela sells vacuum cleaners and she's paid 15% commission. How much will she earn if she sells $105,000 of vacuum cleaners in a year? So we're simply going to find 15% of $105,000. So firstly, we're going to change that 15% into a decimal so that we can put it onto our calculator. And the way we do that is 15 divided by 100, and that will change that. And then we multiply that by the total sales. And we get her commission for the year is $15,750. Now that would not be a lot for Mary Angela to live on, so she would probably want to negotiate a retainer. Let's look at Bjorn. Bjorn sells sports cars and he has a retainer of $450 per week. So whether he sells nothing or a lot of sports cars, he's still guaranteed some income. Plus 0.8 of 1% commission. How much would he need to sell in order to make $1,000 a week? Now this question's a little bit more complicated. one thing that's very tricky on this question that a lot of students get lost with is the 0.8%. I notice a lot of people will convert that to a decimal and they'll convert it to 0.08 because they're trying to do it in their head. That's actually 8%, and 0.8% is quite a bit less than that. So the best way to do this is to put it in your calculator, 0.8 divided by 100. It'll change that to a decimal for you in a second. Okay, let's suggest to ourselves, we're going to set up a little bit of algebra here. You might be able to think of another way to set this out, but I'm a maths teacher, so I like the algebra. So I'm going to let the sales that Bjorn has to sell be equal to X. And I'll show you why using the algebra is kind of a neat way to do this in a moment. So his total income is going to be the $450 retainer plus 0.008, that's that 0.8% as a decimal, multiplied by the number of sales that he sells, that X. That's what we're trying to find. Now, he needs to make $1,000 a week, so we're going to let that total income be equal to 1,000. 1,000 equals 450 plus 0.008x. So now it's just a fairly simple, straightforward bit of transposing of algebra here. We're going to subtract 450 from both sides of the equation, and that will leave the 0.008x all by itself, and we've got 550 on the left-hand side of that equation now. And now, x is multiplied by this pesky decimal, so we're going to divide both sides by 0.008x, so the x will be all by itself. When we put that in our calculator, we find that he has to sell $68,750 worth of sports cars every week in order to make that kind of money. So because there was no x in the original question, I'm now going to write a statement that Bjorn needs to sell cars to the value of $68,750. So pretty much Bjorn's got to sell about a car a week in order to bring home $1,000. Okay, we're going to do one more example now with commission. This is a different kind of commission. This is a real estate commission for Ella, who sells houses. And this is fairly typical in the real estate industry. They have what's called stepped commission. So there'll be a commission of a certain percentage on the first amount of sales, and then all the sales after that first percentage are calculated at a different rate. So this is where you need to set your working out really clearly as well. You're going to have the first commission that you're going to calculate first, and then the second commission, and then you're going to add them together. So she needs to sell $1 million home in Raby Bay. That's actually quite a cheap house in Raby Bay. So her first commission is going to be 5%. So we've changed that 5% to a decimal. We multiply that by the first $75,000, and the first part of her commission is $3,750. Now we need to work out that second set of commission, but to do that first, we've got to work out what the balance is. The balance is the $1 million house, take away that first $75,000, which is $925,000. And it's the $925,000 that the 2.5% commission is going to be calculated on. So here's our second commission now. So 2.5% is 0.025 as a decimal. Multiply that by $925,000, and her second commission is $23,125. So you can see here where the beauty of setting your working out with some clear words explaining what you're doing is really important, because you're going from one calculation to a different calculation to another calculation, and now finally to your fourth calculation where you add the two commissions together and come up with your final answer. So it's kind of like this calculation changes directions 3 or 4 times, and if you didn't use any words, it would be really hard to follow what you were doing. So you need to set this out. It doesn't need a paragraph or a sentence for everything you're doing, just a couple of words to explain what the actual calculation is that you're doing. The last thing I want to talk to you about today, and I'm so glad you're still with me, is piecework. Piecework is a type of income that's paid per item or per group of items. And you typically see this in industries, for example, where you're selling or delivering newspapers. Newspaper companies pay people to actually roll the newspapers up, put them inside the plastic bags, and then go and throw them at people's houses. But they pay them for the 100 of them that they do, or per item. Other types of piecework could be fruit picking. It could also be things, for example, when I do external marking for the QCAA, I get paid for every item that I mark, a certain rate. So there's lots of different types, whether it's unprofessional work or professional work. So our first example is with Chen, who picks bananas, and she's paid 20 cents per kilo picked On Monday, she picks 80 kilos. How much was Chen paid? I can tell you it's probably not a lot if she's only paid 20 cents a kilo. So it's a fairly easy calculation here for Chen. 20 cents multiplied by 80. Now, this is really nice that they've actually put this question to us as $0.20, but it might be presented to you as cents, 20 cents per kilo. And you may actually need to change your final answer into dollars. That's something to be aware of, because it wouldn't make sense to say that somebody was paid 1,600 cents. No one's going to stand there and physically count out 1,600 cents. They would convert that into dollars. So we can see here that Chen got paid $16 on Monday. And my next example today, Jasmine sews dresses. So something like this is also usually paid by piecework. She's paid $3.50 per dress for the first 200 dresses that she makes in a month, and $4.95 for every dress that she makes after that. How much was she paid in a month where she sewed 430 dresses? She was busy. Okay, so once again, this is this kind of stepped mentality where we've got different calculations within the one calculation. So use your words. Those first 200 dresses, 200 multiplied by that first rate of $3.50. So we're going to work at that $700 for the first 200 dresses. Now we need to do a subtraction here. We need to work out how many dresses were left over after she did those 200. So the remaining dresses was 430, take away 200 gives us 230 dresses. And now we're going to apply this new rate of $4.95 to the remaining dresses and multiply that out. And we get for the second lot of dresses, $1,138.50. And then we need to add those two rates together to get her total pay. 700 plus $1,138.50 gives us $1,838.58. Not a bad month for Jasmine. And our final example today is with Brianna, who delivers newspapers. She is paid $2.50 for every 100 that she delivers. How many would she need to deliver to be paid at least $300? So in this particular situation, the best place to start is to work out how much does she get paid per newspaper. I'm going to set the number of newspapers that she's going to have delivered as X again in this particular situation. So let's firstly work out that pay per paper. $2.50 for 100 means 0.025 per paper. Now you could think of that in terms of cents. It's 2.5 cents per paper that she delivers. We're going to leave that in dollars though, because we're wanting our final answer to be $300. So let's leave the pay per paper in dollars too. So now we're going to set up a little statement here. Her total pay is going to be equal to the 2.5 cents or the $0.025 per paper multiplied by the number of papers, which is X. And we're going to set that total pay to $300 because we want to be at least 300. So now I simply divide both sides of the equation by the amount that she's paid per paper, and I'm going to find that X is equal to 12,000 newspapers. Now, in my original question, there wasn't an X, so I need to write a statement in this situation. Brianna needs to deliver at least 12,000 newspapers to earn $300. So she's going to have to deliver a lot more than that. That's a lot of delivery for poor Brianna just to earn a little bit of money there. Well, that's all we've got time for. I'm so glad you stayed with me for all 10 examples. Our next video is going to be on exchange rates. Then we're going to follow that up with dividends, GST, and then we're going to start a new video series. What do you want to see us film? Let us know at mcclutchymass@yahoo.com. I'd like to welcome all of our new subscribers, and I was so excited this week. We actually hit 800 subscribers with Mustafa Simaway. So yay, thank you so much for joining us. And why not follow McClutchy Mass also on Facebook? You can simply go onto Facebook and search for McClutchy Mass and like our page to follow that for news and tips and updates. Once again, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining me. I'm Natalie McClutchy. Have a wonderful day.